There's no doubt that Pope Francis has been one of the more progressive popes in modern church history. He's worked to loosen the restrictions on remarried couples and their participation in the Eucharist. He's displayed statues of the Andean fertility goddess in the Vatican gardens, and he's pushed vague declarations on the blessing of same-sex couples. Some have said that the ambiguity of Pope Francis's declarations have been by design. Confusion breeds division and conflict. It undermines confidence in the Word of God. It weakens evangelical witness. And the result today is a fractured church. Many speculate that there will be a backlash against the progressive tenure of Pope Francis. If so, there are a variety of well-respected conservative cardinals who could be strong contenders for the papacy. Let's take a look at 4 of the most likely cardinals who could serve as the next vicar of Christ. Robert Sarah, born June 15, 1945, is a Guinean prelate of the Catholic Church. A cardinal since November 20, 2010, he was prefect of the Congregation for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments, and served as secretary of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples under Pope John Paul II. Sarah is a favorite amongst Catholics who want to see a more traditional and conservative leadership style within the Church. Sarah has been a vocal advocate for the defense of traditional Catholic teaching on questions of sexual morality and the right to life, and in denouncing Islamic radicalism. He has called gender ideology and the terror group ISIS the 2 radicalizations that threaten the family, the former through divorce, same-sex marriage, and abortion, the latter with child marriage, polygamy, and the subjugation of women. Cardinal Sarah has denounced Western homosexual and abortion ideologies, suggesting that both are of demonic origin, and he has compared them to Nazism and Islamic terrorism. He has been described as largely sympathetic to liturgical practices of the era before the Second Vatican Council, but has also proposed that partisans of different liturgies learn from each other and seek a middle ground. Sarah is a popular cardinal amongst traditionalist Catholics, and his name is often floated as a potential candidate for the papacy. However, at the age of 78, he may be well over 80 by the time the next conclave has convened. Additionally, Pope Francis has restructured the College of Cardinals, making it less likely that they would choose such a traditionalist cardinal such as Robert Sarah. Peter Erdo, born June 25, 1952, is a Hungarian cardinal of the Catholic Church. He was president of the Council of the Bishops' Conferences of Europe from 2006 to 2016 and was the Relator General for the Third Extraordinary General Assembly of the Synod of Bishops in Rome. Erdo is fluent in English, Italian, French, Latin, and his native Hungarian. Like other traditional cardinals, Erdo has been at odds with Pope Francis as to whether remarried couples can participate in the Eucharist. Pope Francis has wanted to take a more open approach to this issue and to relax the rules for those that have remarried. Cardinal Erdo has strongly disagreed with this approach. In 2015, he gave a legalistic introductory speech at the Synod, which suggested divorced and remarried Catholics could only receive communion if they renounced sexual relations with their new spouse. He argued that integrating divorced and remarried Catholics into the Church is different from admitting them to the Eucharist. In response to Pope Francis's Fiducia Supplicans, in which he opened the door to the Church potentially blessing same-sex couples, Erdo had some pointed words to say. He indirectly criticized Pope Francis for following fashionable and modernist politics instead of the ways of Christ. He stated, "If we are Christians, we must not only follow a pious philanthropic philosophy, perhaps with content that changes every decade according to fashion or the taste of the majority, but, rather, remember that the teachings, life, death, and resurrection of Jesus are the eternal standard." Erdo, having grown up in the Soviet Union, has been a harsh critic of communist regimes through his lifetime. His parent tried to raise him in the Catholic faith at a time when people who practiced their religion faced persecution. Many Catholics were discriminated against in the workplace. Erdo's father, a lawyer, was even barred from practicing his profession. Gerhard Müller was born December 31, 1947, and is a German cardinal of the Catholic Church. He served as the cardinal prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith from his appointment by Pope Benedict XVI from 2012 until 2017. Pope Francis elevated him to the rank of cardinal in 2014. Like Robert Serra, Cardinal Müller has criticized politicians who support abortion rights, including President Joe Biden. He has stated that to demand abortion as a human right cannot be surpassed in its inhuman cynicism. Additionally, Müller has been strongly opposed to any attempt for the Church to bless same-sex unions. He stated that Pope Francis should correct and, if necessary, punish the German bishops who have approved what he calls heretical texts and proposals directly against the Catholic faith. Cardinal Müller has found himself at odds with Pope Francis more than once. In 2019, Pope Francis displayed images of the Andean fertility goddess, Pachamama, in the gardens of the Vatican. This was an attempt to reach out to and evangelize indigenous groups. A group of local Catholics, seeing the statues as idolatrous, took one of the statues and threw it in the river. Müller broke with Pope Francis and defended the assailants who threw the statue into a river. He stated that the great mistake was to bring the idols into the church, not to put them out. Cardinal Müller has also been critical of Pope Francis's efforts to limit the Tridentine Mass. He stated, "Instead of appreciating the smell of the sheep, the shepherd here hits them hard with his crook." He also contrasted the suppression of the Tridentine Mass with the supposed introduction of pagan elements within the liturgy at the Amazon Synod held in 2019. The paganization of the Catholic liturgy through the mythologization of nature, the idolatry of environment and climate, as well as the Pachamama spectacle, were rather counterproductive for the restoration and renewal of a dignified and orthodox liturgy reflective of the fullness of the Catholic faith. Willem Eijk, born June 22, 1953, is a Dutch prelate of the Catholic Church, a cardinal since 2012. He has been the Metropolitan Archbishop of Utrecht since 2007. Before his clerical career, he worked as a doctor. As a priest, he made medical ethics the focus of his academic studies. Cardinal Eijk has been willing to take many bold positions that have generated headlines internationally. In June 2015, Eijk ordered the removal of Rihanna Gralick, the transgender treasurer of the Norbertus parish for Eastern Flevoland, over the objections of the parish board. In November 2022, he asked Pope Francis to write an encyclical on the issue of gender theory. His request was partially satisfied by the declaration Dignitas Infinita of the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith. In 2015, Eijk was elected to represent the Episcopal Conference of the Netherlands at the Synod Bishops on the Family in October. In advance of the Synod, he published an essay stating that couples entering into a civil remarriage without having received annulments of earlier marriages represent a form of structured and institutionalized adultery. Following the Synod, he became a critic of Pope Francis's Amoris Laetitia. In 2018, he said the document had caused doubt to be sown, and said Francis should state more clearly that marriage is one and unbreakable, and that a Catholic who remarries after divorce must be denied communion. In May 2018, after Pope Francis failed to reject a draft proposal on the part of the German Bishops' Conference to allow Protestants to receive the Eucharist in Catholic churches in certain cases, Cardinal Eijk wrote that Francis was failing to defend the clear doctrine and practice of the Church, and that this represented a drift towards apostasy from the truth.